This is Tanya Brakeman. I'm the creator, writer, and director of Revel, The Audacity of Ecstasy. Revel is a curriculum, and the first weekend of Revel's work starts with a weekend I call Essential Relating. You'll see a few cuts of a weekend like that here. Good morning. Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for being here today. It's a delight to be with you in this beautiful space. Now let's begin.
As much as I love conversations about relationship, what I love more than anything about relationship is intimacy. And what is intimacy for any individual? So much of the investigation of Revel's work in our workshop this weekend will be, what are your common and sometimes unconscious associations with expressions? Words like sex, love, intimacy, or power. Those four in particular are a foundation for Revel's work. Having some sense of what rises up in you as a reaction to a word, a sound, an interaction, an exchange with another human being. What prickles that thing on the back of your neck or makes your stomach clench that has you then be reactive rather than relatable? How can we move from reactive spaces to relatable spaces in the realms of sex, love, intimacy, power? How might we tap into a more authentic is the word we hear all the time now, right? But what I like to say is innate, that there is actually an innateness to the erotic intelligence in you and in you and in me. But we don't talk about that much in relationships. What is your innate erotic intelligence? What in the world does that even mean? We'll talk more about that. We'll see what comes up for you about that. And as we go into the weekend, you'll have an opportunity to find these beautiful threads that connect from reactions that you might have in an everyday common interaction or in a deeply intimate, sensual space. Something that triggers and catches you and you're not sure if it's good or bad or right or wrong, and we get curious about what some of those reactions may be connected to. Now, this work isn't inherently what I would call trauma-informed, as has become such an important conversation in our relationship world today. But you will absolutely notice in the weekend that there are opportunities and occasions to notice what you might call a trigger, a reaction, or a hook, I don't pose to be any version of a trauma therapist, any layer of it. And indeed, we can notice that in our everyday conversations, particularly around intimacy, those things will come up. Yeah. So Revel's work is more of an opportunity for you to examine, to notice what comes up, so that it can be taken into its proper environments of exploration, healing, investigation. So my desire today is to begin walking with you through a few exercises so that you can become or begin to become more aware of some of those heightened arousals. We want to ask questions like, is that an authentic arousal, or is that purely an associative reaction that I have to some stimulus? Or somebody says the word respect, and one person in the room beams with joy, and another person cringes in pain. Why is that? And how is it that in our conversations, particularly around relationships, sex, intimacy, love, power, there's so much at stake? And the reactions that we have can so indicate spots that need tending, that need care, that need attention. And yet in those reactive spaces, those reaction states, oftentimes we're not the one who can ask for what we need because we don't even know. But our body's saying, something's up, I'm not sure, and we're either going to fall into a fight, flight, freeze, fawn state And it may take a while for us to come out of those states. Revel's work is about finding a way with your voice, your unique way of saying the thing that you want to say to your partner, to your coworker, to your daughter, to your spouse. And to, rather than thinking, oh, I'm going to go to my card deck and I'm going to pull out just the right thing to say at this moment, which who of us and when can we ever really count on the tool being the thing in the moment, when relationships are so dynamic and the occasions that are happening are a confluence of all of the energies of all the people in the room. It's never just one thing happening or something happening between two people. There's so much more going on. So in language, which is often made the kind of the foil, the problem, the issue, language as the issue. That's where the problem is. And with Revel's approach and the kind of the games and the investigations we get to have through looking at and playing with language in a Revel structure, we start to find those pieces of language, those expressions, those words, sentiments, core emotions, feelings, that find that place. I always think of it from right here, this place behind the sternum, this center of the being, kind of between the belly and the heart, that is very wise and very deep and primal, some would say. That inner knowing and inner quiet and inner erotic intelligence that so often gets trampled. In this weekend, we're here to find what are those unique articulations for you that give you access to a truer sense of your own experience and a truer sense of your own expression in these delicate realms of relationship, sex, love, intimacy, and power. So shortly we'll break, but before we do, I'd like for you to write this word on your paper. And we'll start with just a very beginner exercise. It's very light, nothing to take too seriously. It's not homework. This is just a scratching of the surface. I'd like for you to write the word desire in the center of your paper. You can even draw a circle around it if you like. This is a word association exercise. I want you to write the first 5 words that come to mind as you hold in regard this word. Think about sensations, think about sentiments, think about judgments that you may have, anything that just automatically comes up for you, anything from the 5 senses. And then for those of you willing, I'll have you just kind of say one word at a time so we can hear a number of different voices speaking, and notice the difference in the words that each of you automatically came up with for that one word. I love the looks. All right, ready? Okay. As you feel moved, you don't need to raise your hand, just say the word that comes up for you connected to desire.
Deep.
Deep.
Shame.
Shame.
Beauty.
Beauty.
Adventure.
Adventure.
Arousal.
Arousal.
Hunger.
Hunger.
Satisfaction.
Satisfaction.
Denial.
Denial. Oh, the conundrums. The paradox.
Just fun.
Fun. Yeah. Isn't that fascinating? And then if we took another layer out, I would say, what are the sensations you notice in your body? What are some of the secondary emotions that you have about these being your 5 words? And we would start to build it out. And then we could work off of those words and expressions and build them out. And you might soon start to get kind of a map of the terrain of you and desire. Through the weekend, we'll be doing that with a number of ideas about relationships. But the primary exercise of the weekend is for us to come to a centered, like a core of who you are about sex, love, intimacy, and power. From where do you orient your experiences in each of those realms? And from where do you orient yourself to express it and exchange it in the world? So that's a big conversation. You might be getting a sense. And this weekend will be about what we call locating your core erotic values. Your core intentions, which is when you are present and well-resourced and able to be in the world fully. And then your counter intentions, which are the backside of your values. They're the thing that protect and defend your values. And they're not quite as graceful, usually. They've got a little more of a bite to them. And they aren't generally considered desirable or appropriate in normal relationships. But indeed, we each have that forward-facing self, deeply connected, well-resourced, available to people in many demanding situations. And then there's that moment. Something happens. You have an associative response. You are now not available for that. You're available for something else. It's called fight, flight, freeze, fawn. And you're ready to do the work of separation and dividing, which is what counter-intentions are all about, right? In a mammal brain, they serve a terrific purpose in survival. And yet, we wind up using those so often in our intimate spaces where we feel nurture is threatened, or desire is threatened, or you name it, something that we value is threatened. So we learned then how to notice the difference and be able to flag our own reaction and falling into the very natural counter-intention and being able to notice it and account for it and say, oh my goodness, I think I was just doing this with you. Was that your experience? And the partner or the person gets to say, wow, that really does account for how I just experienced that interaction. Thank you. What do you hear in that? Someone's ability to notice their own reaction and then present it before it even gets called out by the other person. What does that sound like to you? If someone were able to do that with you, or if you were able to do that with someone about your own reaction without falling down a shame spiral, what could that make available? Intimacy.
Reassurance.
Hmm?
Reassurance.
Reassurance, yeah. Yeah.
Trust.
Trust. Love. Yeah. I think a word that I like to use for this moment of recognizing our own reactions and being able to account for them is accountability. And don't we know, as people who've lived a little bit of life here, that in relationships, one of the fundamental foundations of respect, trust, dignity, confidence in relationships is one's ability to be accountable for their influence. Right? The beauty of discovering these core values and virtues and the core intentions as the present and forward and conscious presentation of those values, and then the counter intentions as the protectors and defenders of those values, is that where there once was, I'll presume, a divide, a sort of like, oh my goodness, I can't stand it when you act like that. It's really awful for me. Would you please stop doing that? It's not useful, it makes me angry, and I need you to stop doing that. That's one way to handle a challenging situation. Understandable in certain cases. But when you approach someone with something like that as a correction, let's pretend the word correction was on your paper and not desire. And we were doing a little bit of word association about the notion of being corrected, particularly in intimate relationship settings. What comes up for you when I say correction? Someone's going to deliver a correction for you in your behavior or your deportment. F you. Yes. Immediate. Didn't take much thought. It's right there. Anybody else? Judgment. Coming at you, or you to them, or both?
Probably both.
Right. Judgment. Right. And then what happens in your body when you think of correction as judgment, or correction as F you? There's a different posture, right? A whole different stance. Something happens in your body. So those are the kinds of questions that we get into, the kinds of investigations that we dance around with.